So now let's look a bit under the hood. Okay, because you're going to need to make some important relations between how things are working under the hood, and it's really, really important. It's a very good system, and there's a lot to learn here, and obviously the kind of level of things that you could produce with will reflect on your based on your understanding of it. So let's go here and let's load my code editor, and as you can see here, I have my basic, WordPress install, clean, same as you would download it normally. And I have a bit of a different way where I kind of change a few settings and setting up differently. So I move the folder, this WP content folder. I move it outside of this. So this is basically the original thing you just extract, and I move my stuff outside here. I create this WP config that essentially says, hey, I'm moving this outside. My content directory is no longer, the normal directory. It's right here inside this src folder. Anyways, you can do that, whatever, it's up to you, but I find this to be super useful for me. Now, bottom line, if you're looking for any of these files, just look inside WP content or try to replicate a similar structure. Perhaps if many of you requested, I'll make a demo on that. But the idea here is to look at how WordPress works. So let's really dive here. Do you see any file that you could modify that would essentially allow you to change the way your website looks? Now, I know to answer this question, you must already have some experience with developing websites, but we know that a website is made of few files, and you might have your index.html, which is your home page, and several other files, for example, about.html, which would be the About Us page. So the answer is to modify the content while you modify the file. And so this is where WordPress is very, very different than what we call static websites. It's very dynamic, and that's the purpose of these bigger platform built with PHP, is that they're dynamic. So there's only one file basically on the server that's going to be responsible to answer, all of the things that you ask through this URL. So essentially here, as you're going through asking for, the admin, or asking for, a certain category or a certain post, well, all of these things, they're all being processed by just one file. And that file is index.php, okay, which is just a wrapper, and it just starts loading all these files, making up the framework. So this really kind of asks the question, how do I change the content, on the home page? How do I change the visual content, when I go to another page? And how do I kind of have this control? We know that if you wanted to make this text appear somewhere else on the page, well, you would need an understanding of HTML, and you would need to change that code in order for it to reflect on the website. So, but in WordPress, the way that you deal with this is, obviously with their infrastructure. And so they've packaged a functioning engine that essentially you feed the files. And so let's get to it now. Let's go and let's kind of understand how it happens here. So the look and feel of a website made with WordPress is built using themes. Okay, so whether you're a seasoned professional or someone just looking to implement a small, quick website, you're gonna be into these things called themes. So the difference is, well, you might have to download the theme and essentially install it and then try to figure out how this theme works. Or if you're a professional, you might be actually creating that theme. So the important part is that there are these folders, these important folders, the theme folders and the plugins folder. And this is where everything kind of goes in as fuel to this engine, to this WordPress engine. And so this is really where all the magic happens. And in order for WordPress to remain relatively flexible, well, you know, it would be kind of a pain if, you know, you had to map pretty much every single thing you wanted to do in order for it to work. So what they did is they set up conventions, like things that you should do in a certain way. And for WordPress, well, that's how you name certain files. So here's how it goes. All right. If, for instance, I wanted to change the appearance of my site and start to create a totally brand new look for my site, I would essentially create a theme. Okay. Now, if you have a theme already, you might be looking into creating what we call a child theme. But in this case, let's focus on, let's say, a professional developer just trying to go in here and create something totally brand new, leveraging the entire framework. So you would be creating a theme. So if we look here, a theme is simply a folder. Well, let's try this. Let's create a new folder, and let's call this test. Okay, so now we have our test folder. Let's go inside the admin. I'm just going to shut this down here because it keeps it popping up. And then we're going to go inside here, and then we're going to go inside our theme. And what I want you to notice is that nothing changed. Why? Because I wanted to address this. It's not just the fact that you create a folder that essentially makes a theme here happen in the list. The reason I did this is I wanted to address what are these files that need to be present in that folder for WordPress to think, okay, I'm going to deal with this as a theme. So let's go ahead and let's create some of these files. First and topmost important file here is style.css. All right, so let's create that, style.css. And then let's create another one, and let's call this functions.php. And let's create another one here. Let's call it index.php. And we would also need what we call a screenshot, but if I refresh this over here, you would already see this new box saying test. And that's simply the name of my folder. So now I didn't really create anything, but I created 3 files. Because I created these 3 files, WordPress now thinks this is an available theme in order for me to work. So if we activate that theme, this becomes our current theme. And then we go inside here and we refresh and we simply have a white page. Of course, I mean, we haven't created anything. So if we put, you know, some kind of a word here inside the page and we say, you know, hello world, like, you know, every good programmer knows how to do, well, we would get that word on the front end of our page. And the reason is that WordPress looks inside the theme and, you know, looks at this index.php, and now for anything that we send this website, you know, any address, any link, is always going to use this file to render and process our site. That's why we see hello world pretty much all the time. Now, if we wanted to change the style, we could simply come here, say body, you know, background color, you know, just add like a grayish background color, and then just kind of refresh. Well, didn't make much of a change here, so let's put something a bit more intense. I'm just kind of popping these numbers. Okay, so, and yeah, I know I was kind of expecting to see it, but I'm going a bit fast, and so the reason why this isn't working is because there's something you must do in this PHP file in order for WordPress to really kind of start working. So let's do just that thing. Let's say WP head. And as soon as we call this, basically, it does everything that WordPress usually does. Loads it up, you know, builds, you know, the different links to the different resources that it usually loads. Just by adding this one line, I'm going to show you how, you know, this site kind of changes by showing you the source and essentially showing you how many things we have loaded into the DOM now, right? So, you can see, well, there's tons of things here. You know, we got the style sheet, you know, we got some things here. And actually, I know why, you know, we haven't seen our style sheet. Again, I'm just trying to make this quite simple, but it's because that style sheet isn't necessarily written properly. So WordPress is like, what should I do with this? And this is where things might be a bit, you know, strange for people who are, you know, web developers and are used to work with just HTML and CSS and are just starting out WordPress and are just starting out, you know, PHP. And what I'm going to do here isn't necessarily anything PHP related or anything, you know, HTML or CSS related. It's really just something that WordPress decided to do. They put that in place and they said, this is how it's going to work. So for you, for example, to go here and change, you know, some of the things that, you know, this theme is about, like the name of the theme, for example, and by who made the theme, and, you know, kind of it's supposed to have a description over here. So these things are placed in comments, you know, one specific comment block above inside the style.css. So let's go ahead and let's see what kind of the basic would look like. Let's say theme name. Now, I'm not inventing this. This is what you have to write in order for WordPress to change, you know, whatever it's doing and pull that variable or that value into the admin. So theme name, we're going to call this, you know, test WordPress. And then if we save that, you know, and we refresh here, you can see test WordPress. So this is the way I was able to control, you know, what was written over here. And this is really just a comment. So they did that, you know, they did that. So let's see here if we add some other things like author, you know, Joel, and then description. All right, we'll just write this is a test. And, you know, just the version, we say this is version 0.01. All right, so just like save this and then refresh, and then you'll see here actually, you know, it's by Joel version 0.01. This is a test WordPress. And then, of course, to customize this image, we would need to place an image over here. So I could just take, you know, any image that's inside these and put it over there. But for now, that's not my point. So where I wanted to go with this, not to waste any time, was really to point you to that page inside the codex. So this is a very important address, codex.wordpress.org. And you want to go out there and you want to get familiar with this website. Okay, they say they have a new code reference here. This looks great. And, you know, theme, if you look about developing themes, this is where you're going to learn how to make everything work. Okay, so essentially I was looking more for this article here, theme development. You kind of just want to click here, and it teaches you exactly some of the things I've been saying, you know, how the anatomy of a theme works, and pretty much this comment I was just writing. And you can have all the other things you can write there. But if you keep scrolling down, here's where it gets interesting. Okay, the template file list. And you look at this list, and first of all, it might kind of seem like, oh, okay, sure, home.php or single.php. But a lot of the real power behind WordPress is here. I mean, many people come to me for questions like concerning, for example, a theme they have on their website, and it's just their layout isn't exactly what they wanted. And many often, if the theme is well built, it's just a matter of copying, you know, one of the file that's already there, duplicating it, and giving it a more precise name in order for you to use it inside the admin in a better way. So, like, for example, if it's a template, then you would change the template to the newly created one. Or if it's, you know, the name of the file here, in order for it to apply to a category, then that would be the case. You would say, for example, category-news. And so, for example, now you'd have a different look and feel for, the news category list of posts. Okay, so what I'm saying here is these files, okay, the way that they're written, the name of these files is really what makes WordPress powerful, because you, by creating these files and naming them like this, are able to control all these different areas of this, framework, and you are able to leverage this very big platform by just creating simple files, putting inside those files the code that you need in order for it to display, what WordPress is giving you. At the end of the day, you'll look at this and you'll say, wow, that was actually pretty easy, because I didn't have to write any, query to the database. I didn't have to write any SQL. I just had to put these pieces of code that are always the same, in these pages, and I'm able to really fine tune the look and feel of my website using just names. Okay, and so earlier we talked about how to differentiate posts and pages, and so the very first thing we're going to talk about by looking at these here is how most of these are related to posts. And the reason is posts have these ways of being rendered automatically by WordPress, and so you just add more and more, and they have, for example, a category page, which is a list of posts belonging in that category, taxonomy page, which is essentially both tags and categories together, and they have things like archives, they have things like date and author, and these pages are more specific, where essentially they're like, well, here's what it looks like when you see a list of posts that one particular author wrote, or here's what it looks like when you see, a list of posts that were published in 2010 on a certain month or a certain day, and so forth. And so this is where you would be able to control these, and they're really all related to posts. So the next thing I get asked is, well, then how is it that I can control pages? Well, the first thing is the basic page. All page template would essentially use this page.php. But then afterward, the way it works is that you create just any new file with any name that you want, and then you control it by writing a special comment at the top of it called template name. And if we go back here, I'll show you where essentially when you have pages, I might not have a template right now, but let's go ahead and create that. So let's say I want to change away a certain page look. Well, I want to create a basic template. So I would write, of course, my PHP block, and then I would write template name. So for example, some of them are like, full width, and then that would be the end of it. And then we could save it as like a new name, right? Something that we invent, full width .php, and then we save that. And so now if we go inside here and refresh, you can see we have this box that just showed up for templates, and we have our full width template. And that's the way we could control how this page looks like, specifically by having the right kind of code right here. Okay, so that's already a lot of information, but this is like foundational stuff. Okay, so recap the difference between posts and pages. Posts can be organized with taxonomies and specifically are built with this idea that you create these special files in order to control how the rendering of these posts look like. Pages, on the other hand, are organized through their structure in relationship to each other. So one page may be a children of another. Think of folders and files. So files are in a certain folders, and then to control their look and feel, well, it's not through special naming convention, but through template files. And so this is how you kind of start by making more professional websites, combining these two things, and really understanding, am I building a post or am I building a page? So I have sites that I've built that are like, there's a few posts and then pretty much the entire site are pages. They're like program description, like for example, a school board has certain types of programs that they offer in their schools. Well, they gave me all their content, but these are, we're in sections, and sections are essentially pages, and they have sub pages, and that's just it. They're pages, and if they want to update them, they go here, they change the page. Simple stuff. And then, for example, they have, few little news releases that they make here and there. And these news releases, I didn't even bother making, something like a news. I just say, hey, this is a post, and essentially they're adding new posts, and this part of the site just automatically catches up and adds these items where they belong. So that's super important. And then we'll go over, perhaps some of the, important files here and how to properly use them, how to, differentiate within, how does a page look? How does a post look? So, a post is a single.php, a page is page.php, but then you can have all these other naming conventions to control, what it becomes the first page on the site, like the home page. Index just really answers to all the calls. It's like, it's important. Index must be present. Again, important. And so that's, a good introduction. Fundamental stuff. Perhaps if you knew that already, then you're on to really building more professional websites. And if you didn't, make sure you study that aspect, because now we're going to build on top of that, and we're going to get to more advanced topics. But essentially the goal of this is that you don't just learn how to use WordPress as like a software that, everybody just downloads, puts on their site, and start, for example, filling in these different boxes and fields. And essentially they look at it and they're like, yeah, you know what, but this is not exactly what I wanted. We want to empower web developers and show them exactly what they need to know in order to make professional website using WordPress.